Hello, welcome to the Virginia School of Traditional Arts. In an earlier video we showed you how to make this fillet knife, and so today we're going to go through the process of making a sheath for this knife. Since it's got such a curved blade, sometimes that causes people an issue, so stay tuned and we'll show you how to fix it. First thing we're going to need is a piece of cardboard. I just have an old box here. We're just going to cut us out a piece. Get rid of that. Alright, you're just going to need a couple of simple items to make your pattern. We're going to use a piece of cardboard for our pattern. It works a lot like leather. It's about the same thickness as our leather, and it will fold and kind of act like our leather. You could use a piece of paper if you want to. Paper will give you kind of some false, paper will wrap around your knife a lot tighter than this cardboard will, and a lot tighter than your leather will. So I suggest using cardboard. We're going to start out with us a strap. This is the belt loop that will go over your belt, and so we're just going to start with that, and we're just getting it more or less straight up and down the piece of cardboard. I think that one's right. Let's try a different one. Try a different one here. That one didn't right at all. And this little pattern I have here is my belt pattern. When I do a belt, this gives me my layout. That's what the holes are. But I'm going to use this end of it for my end of my strap. And you say, well, how long a strap do I need? Well, your handle's going to be down in there, so I'm going to say twice as long as your handle. And you can always make it a little longer and cut it off later, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with a little long. And so that's easily twice our handle plus some. So then you got to determine right or left-handed which side are you going to wear this whole sheath on. And so we're making this for a right-handed gentleman. So we're going to line our handle up here on the strap. And then we're going to take a straight edge, which is our little board again, and we're going to push it over against there, and we're going to make that parallel with our handle. And get the right marker again. And what we're going to do initially is just trace our knife. And we're going to trace this line up this way. So that's our initial step. Then we're going to come back through, and at our widest point we're going to come over about 3/4 of an inch, our widest point being here, 3/4 of an inch, or a fat 1/2 an inch, thick as your finger. And then we're just going to kind of freehand that line down. And I got it over a little close there, so I'm going to come back up here and give me a little bit more. And we can always make this smaller, but once we cut our leather, it's no making it bigger. And so we're going to just extend this line up to about where our handle ducks back in, because that's probably where we're going to start our sheath. And then you can use anything you want. I'm just going to use our little pattern again. I might use this even. We're going to just have something that's a rounded type object. Could be a coin. I've used that a lot. And we're just going to make us a nice round entrance into that belt loop there. Okay. And so we would like to do a similar thing on this side. And so we're going to come from our belt loop. We're wanting it to be pretty much straight across. We go straight across, more or less, at the same place. We can make our entrance in here. And so that'll match. Now the next step is just to cut out this line that we have here, but don't cut over here. And we're going to fold this over and make our second part. So to do that, you can use whatever you want to. I'm going to use a Stanley knife. Get rid of that. For our straight pieces especially, and we cut that off our line slightly, but that's all right. That's what we have initially. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over and trace this other half that we just got over here back on that side. So we're going to hold our straight edge. Hold up our cardboard straight as we can in our line. There we go. And you may have to manipulate this slightly. get it to do what you want it to do. But basically that's it. And then we're going to take our marker again. Draw this pattern out. Hard to do this when you can't see the lines going. And then that's our sheath, and it's a right-handed sheath. Again, you want to check that because the handle will be like this. That. And of course, that's sewed, and this will fold down. Not quite at the top of the handle. It could be a little farther down too if we needed it to be. That. Probably something like that. And so there's our pattern for our sheath. We've got plenty of room on this outside edge. We've got plenty of room at the bottom. We can adjust this up and down as we need to. The main thing is you have room here at this point. That's your tightest point where this handle sticks out. So when you squeeze your leather down, you need that to be enough here to sew on at least, if not a little more. We will stick a piece of leather in the middle of this to keep our blade from cutting our stitches, and that'll help, but you need to have it at the right point initially, and that's why I like the cardboard. It's stiff enough, it kind of simulates the leather. And so that's our sheath at this point. Our sheath will end up being a little bit narrower than this. We'll trim it down once we sew it and everything, before we get ready to sew it. But this is our initial. We need this much leather to start with, basically. And so that'll give us something to go by. And on this side, we have more than enough with this here. We have more than enough so we can actually shorten this significantly if we need to. Depending on our leather, depending on what kind of look we're going for, but this is way too much in my opinion, so we probably end up shortening it. And then next, you need a piece of leather. I have this piece of leather. This is a piece of veg tan. We're going to put some mark on this where we can figure where we want to end our strap, probably. And so we'll see if this piece of leather is big enough, and this one is not quite big enough for what we have here. But it may be suitable. We've got plenty here, so let's see how long we got. Yeah, see, we've got 2 inches here at the bottom, so we can come back. We can come back right much on that. And let's see if we do that when we scoot down to our mark. Not quite still. That would be our mark, and that would be a little. Alright, we've got plenty of pattern here, so we're going to trim up this little bit here. We're just going to do the exact same thing we did before, which is cut that off, fold this over, and trace it on this side. And again, that's why we use cardboard. It's cheap. If we don't like it, once we get it all fixed, we can always do it again. Doesn't cost anything. I like the way this top is working. It's a little bit of a slope here up. I like that. Our curve works well here. I like that. This curve looks good. Our angle here is pretty good. I'll clean that up a little bit. Make it perfectly matching. That's getting our pattern cleaned up. Now let's see what we have for our leather. I would like to use this piece of leather. We could. So that's got all of our pattern on there. And almost down to our line. So let's see what we can do about our top up here. We'll see that's our much as we can have. And that's still probably plenty at that point, or we can take a little more here. And that gets us way down in there, so that's not too much. So somewhere in the middle here, I had to guess. Alright. Well, let's see what that looks like. The knife will be in here about to there. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. There's our pattern. We've screwed up the edge a little bit. We'll fix this end here. All we're going to do is move our point down. And I'm not worried about that point very much because I have an English point that I use to just stamp that out. It cuts it out by itself. So I'm just giving it a rough shape. But you certainly can make this very precise if you wanted to. And you certainly can cut it out with your knife on your leather as well. Wouldn't have to do anything different. So what we're looking for is a place down here that will be below this line. We'd rather not see it. Our stitches, and then we'd have I generally make a thumbnail type stitch there. Something like that. And as long as your stitches are below this front here, you can't really see them. It doesn't really matter. And we may adjust this down a little bit more too. We could do a little bit more down too. Anyhow you like there, that'd probably be better. We can certainly adjust that later. We're just getting our rough pattern out here. And so that's it. Let's see if that'll fit on our leather. And still keep our knife sharp. Alright, that fits on our leather top to bottom perfectly. We've got this here covered. And we've got that. And we want to look at our leather really good. And we've got to figure out, is this the right way to put that on there? If we want this to be the good side of the leather, then this is the opposite way we want to hold this. So we need to do it this way. And see, when we fold it, this is the good side I have up. So we want to make us a mark on this so we don't mess up and make a left-handed sheath. And so we're going to write up on this side, right hand. And when that folds, then of course it'll be your good side out. And so that's why we make our pattern and we think about it a little bit before we go whipping out something on our leather. This piece of leather would probably cost in the $30 range if you just bought this piece, $20 to $30. This is veg tan. It's 7 or 8 ounce leather, so it's heavy leather. And again, we want to look at it and make certain that if we have flaws, something that we don't want, we try to, we can tilt it a little bit if we have to, or what have you, to get it to lay down, get the flaws out of it. But I looked at this pretty good already. Doesn't look like it's got many flaws in it. So that's kind of what we're after. All right, and so it'll be sitting on here the way we like it. Just make sure our cut here at this corner isn't going to dig into our little round part there. All right. We'll cheat that corner just a little bit. So all you do is trace. And I'm not going to draw that point on there because I want to cut that out with my punch. And so we're just checking that. That looks pretty good. We may have to cheat that line a little bit. We cheated her point slightly down here, so we'll just bring it together a little bit. But that's our pattern cut out, or drawn out. Now what we're going to do is cut it out. And for the straight parts of this, I like to use a straight edge. And then you gotta bring in this part. this last corner. There's our sheath. More or less made into our leather made into our sheath. So all we got to do now is cut us out a piece that'll go here and trim up our corner up here and go ahead and glue it together. Well, we'll sew this. You got to do stuff in stages. You got to sew this part on first, and then you got to glue on your strip here. And prior to sewing or gluing, we're gonna put a finish on this. But to put our finish on this, we're gonna make sure our edges are correct, and we're gonna have our end up here I was telling you about punched out, make it right. I don't know if I punch it out or we just may just use this and just draw it. Show you how to do it. Alright, so that's half of it. We'll just spin it over. Line it back up again. Do the other half. Right there, I need to get rid of that. Basically, that's it. Now, any lines that you see on it, which there aren't many, but there'll be a few lines. I tried to cut right on the line best I could. It will go away once we start working on the edges. We'll take those right away. It's not a problem. What we do want is this to be straight down the side. And to make this fold easier, we're going to do a couple things. We could skive it. That would definitely make it fold easier. But that thins your leather. We can also wet it. That'll certainly make it fold easier. But we'll wait on wetting it until after we've put our finish on it. So that's the first few steps of getting your sheath going. Another step that you're going to need to do is have a whelp in this thing, and the whelp, what I call it anyway, is the part that we glue in here that will make our thickness for our piece of, for our blade basically. And to do that, we basically take a piece of leather. And this piece of leather doesn't have to be anything spectacular, and this one is not. It's pretty wiggly on this side. And we're going to draw this shape here onto it. And then we're going to come back and we're going to draw a parallel line best we can. And again, about that 3/4 of an inch. This certainly can be adjusted if need be, but we'll start with this. Rather have too much than not enough. And then we'll just cut this out. When I get to the straight portions, I will use my ruler again. Helps to line it up if you get a few straight parts. And it pulled on me slightly. I'm gonna have to trim her again there. Pull on me a little bit. Get it straight. Once we get her in here. And the main thing is we just want that curve to be smooth, so when we put our knife down in there it doesn't hang on anything. Because this will be the finished inside. See, something like that there, we don't want. That'll cause issues once we get it all together. So that's pretty good. No real hangs on that. Okay. So now we have our pieces for our leather. And what we'll do is we'll just draw this on here. I won't draw it all the way to the top. I don't want to see this later. But we'll draw this on here. And that way it'll let us see how it's looking. If it's looking down the center, where does it fold? What we're looking at here when we're folding it is, where does that line hit? Is it in the center or is it across it? And it's dead in the center. We want it to go on our side just a little bit, so we'll cut that off a smidge. And we'll use that line later when we're actually gluing this thing up too. So. And we're gonna cut this here, cut it square as we can, squarely. And so that's our pieces for our whelp. And now we can stick our knife back in there and see what it's looking like. We got room to sew, that's what we're looking for. Alright, looks pretty good. And I'm going to nip this corner right here just a little bit. Just round it. And that just helps us when we draw our knife and put our knife back in. It doesn't have a square corner to poke. Just rounds it off. That looks pretty good. Alright, the next step would be to finish the outside. put some finish on it, so we'll get that stuff out. Get ready to do that. Alright. First thing I do is I'll burn my dauber just a little bit, get the extra hairs off of it. Some people go crazy with this, but just a little bit. We just don't want that hairy parts on our project. And I have this little gizmo. I didn't make this, actually a gentleman made this. It's meant to not flip over your dies, and it works very well. It's nothing but a piece of plastic with the right size, and has a little piece of plywood on the bottom and a little piece of styrofoam in here. Works very well. And I have some mahogany. What we're going to use today is mahogany Pro Dye, Form B's mahogany Pro Dye. I get my dyes from either Weaver Leather or Tandy Leather. And then they're available at other places as well, I'm sure. Hobby Lobby and that kind of thing has them. But when you apply your dye, of course you want to have it on something that you don't want to keep. So we got it on a piece of cardboard. We're going to start with circles. And we're going to use a lot of dye. And we're going to try to keep our pattern even as we can. And it may take 2 coats. And I start on what you're going to see first. This is the side you're going to see over here. So I'm working on that first so we can keep going back to it. Trying to even out our color, make sure our color is the same color all the way across. What we don't see last. This is the part we won't see at all, really. It's dyed into its, needs to be the same color, but you don't really see this part at all. We'll make sure we got it all dyed, edges and everything. And it is a more or less uniform color. That's what's important. Here. We're just going to buff off any extra we have here. let that dry a while, see what it looks like after it's dry. And we may have to have another coat. Hopefully not, but perhaps. See one little teeny white spot right there. That's it. That's pretty good. We're going to let that dry a while, and then we'll flip it over, and we'll have to dye on the inside here a little bit too. But I prefer this to be dry before I did too much dye on the inside, or drier. And we're going to run this edge too with our beveler before we sew this on as well. And so we'll do that. And so when we dye the inside, we'll dye that edge too. But we'll let this dry up a little bit before we do all of that. Alright, we've let our leather dry overnight. We'll get us a little cloth here and buff it a little bit. And up here on our corner, it's not quite the shape we would like. So we're gonna sand it just a little teeny bit. Just a teeny little piece of sandpaper. We're just going to use that just to round that just a little bit. Don't take much. Just knocking off the square corner places. And you could have done this step prior to putting the finish on if you wanted. And that works pretty well to knock off any bumps that you may have. And we're going to check down here as well, where we have a little transition spot. Anywhere you had to stop and start your cut, you may have a little bump over here as well. Alright, now we're just going to do our edge beveling now that we've got our transition smooth, and we'll just do a little bit of edge beveling here. Okay, we got a little beveler here, and we're just gonna take it and try to keep it all one. Continuous line is what we try to do. And at this point, all we're going to bevel is this top, where we can't get in the future. Trying not to do what I'm doing here. So, we got our edge beveled. Make sure you're happy with that. Get all the old debris out of the way. Get some more dauber this morning. I put a little bit too much on this side. I forgot about us gluing. We were supposed to glue that, so we're going to stay off of our glue line. But we will put a little dye on the inside here. Down a ways so we can, when we look down in the sheath, it won't be white. see, it's got a few spots that are drying faster than the others, and that's what we want to kind of keep an eye for. For a minute or so. And then we'll let this dry. And we'll be ready to slick our edges, which we'll use our little slicker. Alright, we're going to slick the edges. We've got some gum trench, I don't know how you say it, but that's what we use to slick the edges. And all I do is shake it up. You don't need a whole lot of this to make it work, so basically I just put it on with my finger. And you take your slicker. It don't take long if you get it set up right. And what that does is mash down your edges. This is by far the easiest time to do this, so make sure you do it well so that you don't have to do it anymore. That's about it. We'll check this other side to make sure if you don't have any extra on it. If you do, you won't buff it off. And that's all we're going to do for that part. Next we're going to wet the center here so we can fold this over, and that'll help us determine where to sew our pieces at. And when I mean wet it, I don't mean you have to drown it. We just gotta get us a little give here going. So that's what we're looking for. Let that soak in just a second. Dry your hands off so you're not getting water on your outside part. And then that'll help us make this fold over. I really like to get this straight edge that we have here line up. The other edge down at the bottom not as critical. to form it a little bit. And that's the idea. And then we can determine where we want this. We'll see right about there. So we've got that determined where our edge is going to be. So we're going to see what this is going to look like. And I'm just going to draw a little line around this. That. And then if you can see that or not. And then we're just going to basically connect the dots. And we're going to scratch up the surface. This helps with the glue adhesion. Do a crosshatch kind of pattern, and we'll lay it over. We're going to kind of see where it goes. Do the same on this side. Take our rubber cement and this helps us when we're punching our holes that it doesn't move, the rubber cement. And it can be fancy leather rubber cement, or it can be just regular everyday contact cement. You don't need to put a whole bunch on this, but you do need to have enough where it's going to stick. We'll let that dry until it's not sticky anymore. Basically, it's just tacky, and we'll put it together. All right, we got our glue. It's dry, and we're going to put this on. And you really only get one shot at this, so you got to get it right. And what we're looking for is our loop here to be in line, be straight this way. You don't want it to be out of whack. So that looks good. Once you do that, you whack it a little bit, makes your glue set down better. And then we're going to take it and punch some holes for us to sew it. And we'll have that part done. What we have here is a set of punches, pricking iron, some people call them, and I'm using the largest one that I have. The longer it is, the less you do with it, and the straighter your lines will be. And we have a punch block here, just like a soft block that we punch into, and we're going to set this thing so it's in the center and it's straight across. again. And this is a brass hammer that we're using. And we need to pull this out gently so we don't tear our glue loose. There we go. So that's that part. That's about all I'm going to do with that one. That straight line. Then we've got one. That's the next side. And we're probably just going to do 2 of those. Checking to make sure it goes all the way through. And then we want to do the same type of pattern on this side. Hold it still. About right. Alright. And that's our pattern. I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's basically 3 straight lines, kind of like a triangle. They don't quite connect down here at the bottom, but that's just me another stitch. So that's what we got. And we're just going to go and sew that. Alright. We're going to start doing our stitching. So we need a couple of needles. And what I have them poked in here is nothing more than beeswax. And I use that on I use artificial sinew on my sheaths especially. You can use other things, but I think this works well. It does give you a color contrast. You can get, I guess you can get some colors of this, darker or lighter. And but you need 2 needles. These are harness needles. They're about 2 inches long. And then lots of people want to know, how do you figure out how much thread to use? So you find your pattern that you're going to sew, and you kind of loosely go around it one time. And then I generally do at least 5 links of that. And usually I do closer to 6 links. On something small like this is going to be way more than you need. But a larger thing, like when we do down that edge here, if you run out, it's kind of a pain. You can start and stop, but it's kind of a pain to do all that. It's easier if you just go ahead and get the right amount, or at least enough. And so what I'm doing with my beeswax here is I am running my artificial sinew through it. And what that does is it waterproofs it some, and it basically makes it smaller, gets it together. And when you first get it, it's more or less flat looking. And then we're going to thread our needle. And the way I thread the needle is I flatten this down, and I hold the needle's eye, figure out which end's the eye though. Hold the needle's eye between my fingers, and you can kind of feel when it's straight, and you just poke it through. It's none of this looking at it stuff. I can do it faster like that than I can trying to look at it. And then you poke your needle back through the middle. See if I can see that or not. Back through the middle of your thread. See, there's that goes through the eye, and then I poked it back through the middle. You take that, you pull it over, and then you make that cinch up. And then I take and twist that thread right there. And I'll end up twisting all of this thread, but I twist it on the ends here to start with to lock it in. And then that's one end done. And then the other end on the needle, you do the exact same thing. You pull this out flat. You find your eye. And you turn that eye. And you just poke the flat part through the eye. To get it flat in the right way. And get it a little bit flat. Let me cut just a little bit of an angle on it. There we go. It was just boogered up on the end. And like I say, you pull it out. And about 2 inches to 2.5 inches is what I leave on the end of it. And you poke it through the middle. And get the loose end and pull it down. Then pull up your excess. And then this is where I twist it. And I'm just going to twist this whole thread. And what twisting it does is it strengthens your thread a whole lot. This is super strong thread anyway. But once we've twisted it, it makes it a little smaller in diameter, but it makes it a lot stronger. You've got it twisted like that. And we'll twist from this end a little bit. Pull it down. And we're ready to sew. And we've got more than enough here to sew this little bit. We pull this out. And we're not wanting it to get twisted up, so just starts doing that to keep it straight. Alright, you can start anywhere you want to. I'm going to start down here at the point, and I'm going to go probably this way. And so what we're looking to do is we're looking to take our awl. We've got holes in this, but our awl, the leather actually tries to suck up and shut those holes pretty quickly. And that's what we want it to do at the end. Right now we want it to have those holes open. And so I'm going to count back from my stitches. I'm going to go this direction, so I'm going to start here at this point, and I'm going to count back 3 holes, and I'm going to go down in that and pull our needles out straight. Pull our needles out to where they line up. Okay. And then I'm going to take the needle I just went down with, and I'm going to come up, if I can see it, up through the hole that was on this side towards the peak of that. And we're going to check our needles again. Until you get 2 or 3 stitches, your needles can pull off and be off pretty easy. And that's when you'll run out of thread if you get off too much. One you'll have plenty of thread, the other one you won't. Now to do saddle stitching, which is what I'm attempting to do, is we're going to take our needle and wrap it around the thread, just the thread that we're going back down, and we're going to go back down that thread. And we're trying not to pierce that thread. We don't want to pierce it in that hole. And then we're going to pull this thing tight. And we're going to pull it into the hole, and I just pulled it too much. Into the hole. And we'll check our threads again. We want them to be close to being right at this point. Okay. And so we're going to take our thread on the bottom again, our needle on the bottom rather, and we're going to poke it up, back up through this hole, the next hole. We're going to take our top thread and we're going to wrap it around the needle. Poke it back down the hole. He says, and I'm trying to pull that thread back towards my right hand to get it out of the way so I'm not piercing it. Make sure you don't get around all your extra stuff. Okay. And so now that's our first couple of stitches done. You can see that. And we're going to start and go backwards now. We're going to lock in the start. And once you sew them through the holes, they get pretty tight. So we're going to take our awl again. And we're going to take it down in there and make them open back up a little bit for us. And we're always going to take this bottom thread and put it up the hole. Once we get going here, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. We're going to pull that tight. We're going to pull it so that the knot goes down in the hole. And we're just going to keep repeating that, and we're just going to go all the way back around. Nobody out there, I told you. My dog's looking out the window to see if somebody's coming. But we're just going to keep doing this. We're going to go all the way around. When we get to this hole, we're going to back up 3 stitches or 2 stitches, just like we did to start with. Dogs are wound tight today. Alright. Nobody out there. Alright, so that's our start. We're just going to continue right on around, just doing what we're doing. I'll bring you back. Alright, I've gotten all the way around to where we started, and all I'm going to do is take my awl. Like I said, once you've sewn through the holes one time, they get tight. And then I'm going to go backwards a couple of holes, and then I take our needle from the inside, and go back out. Go back out. A couple of holes. Seeing as how this is the part that holds the knife to you, and it's the hardest part to fix if something goes wrong. A lot of times I'll just use up whatever thread that I have here going back the other direction. So it's basically been sewn twice, but 2 or 3 stitches is plenty to lock it in. And once in a while you may have to get your little pair of pliers and pull on the string. But that's 3 stitches. That's going to be close enough for what we're doing. And so we're just going to clip it off. And we just have some little tags sticking here, so I'll take those tags and poke them out to the front. And I'll burn that. So a little tag. And depending on your thread, what that gives you, on this type of thread, that'll give you, it'll just burn up into like a little knot almost. And then we're going to take our piece and we're going to mash those threads in. And we can do that from both sides. What we're looking for here is just to be down below the surface of the leather, or just about. You can cut a stitching groove in this, but in my opinion that just weakens the leather. Now if we can get those stitches to lay down and have our full thickness of leather, I think that's better. Nothing on this is going to wear out. I mean, it's all below the leather now. And like I said, we just take our little hammer and just kind of drive it in there. And that's that part done. And then we're to glue it on our whelp. And our contact cement here. Just hang this a little bit around here. Make sure you paint the right side of your whelp. You know, my whelp is, we're putting flush to flush to flush sides to flush side there. And a lot of times I'll paint my glue twice. I'll let it dry and I'll paint my glue twice. Alright, I think our glue is finally dried. And again, you only get one shot at this thing, so you need to do this systematically. So I kind of run it around the edge, keeping it tight to the edge. And again, we'll come back. Pounding with our little teeny hammer. Make sure it sits down good. And then we have one more thing to do before we shut this up and sew this part. Well, we have 2 things. We're going to put our logo on this with our name and our name of our company, Fox Ridge Arms, and we're also going to treat the inside with our tan coat. So we're going to use tan coat. I've just got it in a little jar. Burn our little dauber again. Get rid of the extras on it. And we're not going to put tan coat on where we're thinking we're going to glue this thing. So we're going to take a little bit of a mark here. Maybe something like that. And make sure our pen is ready. At least that much. Because our tan coat will, I need to be a little wider. Our tan coat will keep our glue from working as good. So we're not going to put it on our whelp here, or no, we're not going to put it over there where that line is. People apply this in different ways. You can apply it with a rag. I generally put it on with a dauber and then kind of wipe it off with a rag. And we're going to go up our sheath loop here. We could have done this before we sewed, but I generally don't. I'm going to hunt us a rag. There's one. And we're going to pull this in one direction. Figure out which way it feels like it wants to go. That's the way it feels like it wants to go on this one. And what this does is it seals your inside of your sheath. Some anyway, from water or debris or whatever. Then we're going to turn it over and we're just going to keep on. We're trying not to get this on our top grain leather here now, so we're just going to take it easy. And we'll pull it back this way. Before we do anything else, we'll let that dry. We just want to make sure it looks like it's an even coat. It's not splotchy looking, even though nobody will ever see that. I see it. So I'm going to do it to where it's even looking. A little bit. Our rag is damp now, so it's it'll be all right. Just want to make sure that we don't have any on our top grain at this moment. We'll set this thing down and let it dry. Set a rag over there, let it dry. Alright, we're going to let that dry for a little while. While it's damp, however, we're going to start kind of manipulating it, folding it a little bit so it'll feel right. It'll feel right. Start doing right when we go to sew it. And we did this with the water too earlier, but anytime you get it moist, whether it be with this dye or the tan coat or whatever you're putting on it, certainly can form leather whenever it's moist. So we'll just do that a little bit. Let it sit there, and I may even put my little hammer on it for a moment. We'll get a piece of scrap leather so we don't mar it. And just sit there and dry up a little bit. Alright, I almost went outside and did our stamp. And this is what our stamp looks like. It's the name of my company and my signature. I ordered this from a gentleman that deals on eBay, and I would have to look up his name. Anyway, he did a good job with it. Works well. And he was out of Texas, if I recall. But we're just gonna put this on this one. Y'all dogs, relax. Y'all nervous today. What is wrong with y'all? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and fold it over and let this other touch it. And that will even be better than what our guest line is. And so, there we go. Something like that. And then that will allow us to see, hopefully on this side, where we need to be. Exactly. Bella, lay down. Alright, our glue is dried. I got a little glue on the leather. But we should have to get that off. So we're going to start it down. And once we're happy with it being down, we'll go back through and there's a thing called a glue eraser. That's what we got here. And we're just going to go around where we think the glue is. I wiped off as much as I could when it was wet. But this helps. I'd rather not get it on there, but that'll help. Glue this together. Next step is to sand this, sand or cut it. If you got a sander, it's the easiest. Sand this smooth into a smooth shape, and then we'll draw us a line on here to put our stitches in, and we'll stitch it. sand it, the little edge doesn't sand. The green part of the leather don't sand. The inside part sands pretty good, but the green doesn't sand at all. We're going to cut that off later. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take our little tool here that puts a crease in our leather, and we're going to use that for our stitching groove. So this tool for. Give us a good straight line for our stitching. We'll do it on this side as well. That's our stitching groove. You can cut stitching grooves in, but I feel that weakens your leather. It does get the threads a little lower below the surface, but this technique does that same thing too, but without cutting your leather. So I prefer to do it this way. And we're going to take our frickin' iron again. Here at the top, a little smidge farther towards the top up here. My leather dives away, but not quite. And the idea with this is we want it to be straight up and down. So best I can, I'm going to get this fillet flat. Check and make sure that we're in our stitching groove. We're holding it straight up and down. And we go down as far as we can. Pull this out gently so it doesn't tear up our glue. And we're just going to guesstimate our stitch length here between these, so you leave a little gap. Wanting this to be as straight as you can get it. That's why we used our straight edge on our, when we cut this. That's why we used our sander on the flat, and I keep moving it around. Keep moving it around. Just make sure that it's in the right place. Hold it straight down. And all I'm doing is I'm pushing this off with my thumb one side then the other. Instead of just trying to rake it out, you'll tear your leather with the little prongs. Alright, I lost a little footage, but this is what we got. We've sanded up this edge. We've used our little tool here to run us a groove. It's a stitching groove. A crease more than a groove, and then we've punched holes using our pricking iron, and then we went back through because our pricking iron is not wide enough, thick enough to get through all of this. We went back through and finished the holes off with a little nail, and so we've got holes all the way through. We've got our thread measured out for our starting. It's a little longer than I can reach, which it will go away pretty quickly, and I'll get back to being comfortable. We're going to start up here, go up 3 and down 3, and then go all the way down here and back up 3. So when we get that done, we'll bring you back. Alright, we've got our sheath done sewing. So now we've trimmed off our threads. We've got our little pieces sticking out again. We're going to burn those off. Alright. Those threads off. And we're going to take our edge bubbler. We're going to knock off this little bit of edge here. Just a little bit here around this bottom to do. Alrighty, so there's our sheath. We're going to dye our edge. You can paint them, you can dye them. It's 6 or 1/2 dozen of another. I like to dye mine because it doesn't go away. Sometimes the edge paint doesn't stay as good sometimes. It's pretty good, but sometimes not. So we're going to get our over right here. We're being careful not to get this on our threads. Keeping us a good straight line as we go along. And we're going to let that dry, and then we'll slick our edges. And we're going to let that dry. We're going to stitch these few little stitches here, and then we're going to slick our edge and show you how to wet form this sheath to make it fit our knife. We've got our extra stitch line done. It's finished. We've got our edge dyed, and so we're going to use our gum trench again. We're going to slick the edge. Just get the right slicker here. Sometimes it's so big we gotta use our other end. It's looking like it's working good. That looks good. Alright. Test fit our knife again. Move all this out of the way. And that's feeling a lot better. It was a little loose before we sewed that series of threads, so that's helped a whole lot. And so what we're going to do next is just take it in the sink and run it full of water, get it all wet all the way around, every bit of it wet, and we'll bring it right back, and then we're going to rub it and make this form into where this will lock in even better than it is now. Prior to us getting it wet, we're going to wrap our knife in saran wrap. And what we're looking to do is just to get our knife to be the same shape it normally is with our saran wrap, and protect our handle and our blade from getting sopping wet. So, alright, all I've done is take it in the kitchen and run it slam full of water. Got water all over the outside. Every bit of it's the same amount of water. Dump the water out of it. We ran it all the way down inside. We're going to let this sit about 10 minutes till it starts drying a little bit. Just the same thing as you're doing any tooling. If you do it right now, it's mushy. We're going to let it start setting up a little bit and dry out. We'll stick our knife down in there, and we're going to form it to this shape. Alright, it's been a few minutes. We're going to put our knife down in here. We've got it wrapped in saran wrap, of course. Then we're going to take, and this is called a bone folder, and this one's made out of plastic, but it's basically a tool you use to form your leather. And you can also just use your fingers once you get it going. Just mash it up there around it so it'll form to that shape. We'll crease this a little more we can. And then we can let it sit there and dry for a while. I generally don't dry it maybe an hour or so. And we'll pull our knife back out of it and squish it down a little bit more. I see a few marks that our bone folder has put on this, so we're going to clean those up a little bit. So we're not showing. That looks a lot better. But I'll let it dry in here an hour or so, and then we'll come and pull it out and let it dry overnight fully. And as it's drying overnight, it'll actually shrink up a little bit, and so it'll become a little bit more tight. Alright, here's our sheath dry, and we're going to put a little carnauba cream on it. Show you that. That's gum trash. Here it is. Carnauba cream. So that's what we're going to use. Apply it with a little rag. We can find one we haven't used too much. This makes your leather soft and feels good. Put it in our loop as well. These are other parts here. Don't hurt anything. Once you get it applied a little bit, you buff it. Alright, and that is our sheath made. Got our stamp on it where we have our name. Got it saddle stitched. This was mahogany. What I used to make this was mahogany Farm Bees Pro Dye, Canava cream, gum tranch, and I'm butchering that one. And that was for the edges. And this was 7/8 ounce edge tan leather that I bought from Weaver Leather. And this one's gonna be in the done book. We're gonna have it done. We could have put stamps on this. We could have tooled it. We could have done a lot of things, but the gentleman that wants it just wants it plain, so that's what we're doing for him. This leather has some interesting character in it. It's got a few marks. That's kind of wrinkles where the cow's probably his neck was. But I put those on the back for the most part. There's a few here on the front, but that's you could have highlighted that. I don't think it's a bad look, but I chose to put it on the back. That was our finish of our leather sheath. Hope y'all have learned something. I hope y'all got something out of this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you want to check us out on Etsy, that's great. If you want to check us out and come for classes, during the pandemic, we're doing small classes. So if you're a couple, 3 of you want to have a class, 4 of you, whatever your family is, you're inside your loop. If you work with them or they're your family, you live with them, you're welcome to come sign up for a class. We just don't want to introduce any new people together. Just give us a call and we'll take care of that for you. We've got lots of different classes that we can offer you. But that's our sheath. And here is our knife in it. Fits very snug. That's what we want.